Buus. If anybody knows me, knows that I absolutely love what Mathias and their team has been doing with Hole Punch. I love the shirt. And his talk is Let's Build Apocalypse-Ready Peer-to-Peer Apps. And I guess I'll let him do what the app is, but it has literally become one of my favorite tools, and I talk to him every day up there. So welcome, Mathias Buus, building apocalypse-ready peer-to-peer apps.
Thank you. All right. You can hear me? Yeah, wow. It goes through. Awesome. Very happy to see so many people excited about the apocalypse. Woo. I know I am. Let's see if this works. There we go. Cool. Was that me? Yeah, it was me. Awesome. It works. Maybe this is connecting to the cloud and then sending the stuff back down there, or maybe it's peer-to-peer, who knows? We'll find out. Basically, yeah. So I'm Mathias. I run a company called Hole Punch. We were here last year also. Always excited to be at Plan B. I'm the CEO. If you ever want to be a CEO, don't. It's a terrible job. Just be a programmer or whatever it is you're doing, just keep doing that. But one of the best things about being in charge is that I get to work with a ton of really, really smart people every day, and that's basically what gets me up in the morning now. So that's really cool. We build peer-to-peer technology, and I think every year we get a little bit darker, just because time and world and age. But basically, I'm here to talk about building software for the apocalypse, which just means software that basically runs everywhere all the time, et cetera, et cetera. But let's dive into it. So yeah, I was here last year, and first of all, let me just apologize because I think we made slides for like 40 minutes, and I'm sure we have like 25 minutes. So either I'm gonna finish in like 15 minutes, and you're all gonna be like, "Oh my God, what happened?" Or we're gonna run through half of it and just gonna be really depressing, so we don't get to the point. But let's see. But we're making these slides. And we're just like, Jesus Christ, man. It's like the same thing every year. I don't know if you remember this, but like centralized systems, they really, really suck. Earlier this year, because we were like, what happened this year in the centralized world? And we're trying to sum it up, and there's just been so much stuff going on. So this one was something that hit very close to home to me. I don't know if you remember, but there was that update to that centralized software called CrowdStrike, which just took down all Windows computers everywhere. Basically landed all the planes because nobody could take off because nobody could boot their Windows. This one hit very close to me because I had my sister visiting and she couldn't get home. And if you've ever been stuck with family, you know how much intense that gets. So like that happened, right? Centralized systems, somebody pushed a mistake. That happens, we push mistakes all the time. Centralized systems, single point of failure, boom, done, no flights. That's all it takes now. No flights worldwide, billions of dollars lost. Sucks. That's just how it is. This thing also happened. Centralized systems getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Data leaks happen every year. This data leak happened this year. So Ticketmaster, if you don't know, is one of those sites that sell tickets for events. They just casually, exposed that they had a leak. They leaked like 500 million people's data. Basically, at this stage, if you haven't had your data leaked, it's kind of like surprising. So now you probably all know that I go to all the Taylor Swift concerts and stuff because all my data is probably leaked in there also. But it's really, really intense, and it just keeps happening and just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's insanely frustrating. This one was also interesting, I think, for me. So basically, Twitter in Brazil basically got shut down because some guy somewhere, I don't even know all the details, but somebody somewhere didn't think they followed the rules, or they changed the rules, and that all it takes, centralized, somebody calls somebody up, they shut it down, they have to change it. I think they ended up caving in there and changed the rules of Twitter so they could censor some people. But all it takes is like a phone call because it's a centralized system, which really, really sucks. And you disconnect tons of people everywhere. And yeah, just more and more and more of that stuff. There's a ton of this stuff going on also, like, memes are getting weaponized. Whenever there's a riot somewhere now, because we all post things in decentralized systems, they get taken out of context and like they get weaponized really fast. And I don't even know if any of this is true, because there's also so much disinformation running around these days because of centralized systems. But like, people go to jail for memes now, and I think that's intense. That's why I post all my memes on Keat now. We'll get to that, because then I can post all the really spicy stuff without going to jail. So that's something. But yeah, like that's the stuff. That's like the norm now. That's what happened this year. And then we have like the rise of AI, and like everybody's talking about AI. But basically, what they're trying to say is, let's take all the data, feed it into these massive centralized systems, train all these models that are massively centralized. Some use cases are good, other use cases are just truly dystopian, and like centralized systems running amok. I don't know if you're my age, but if you are my age, like late 30s, you're probably on Reddit once in a while. That's what I'd like to do. The amount of bots on there running with like LLMs, like large language models, just posting stuff is insane. Like, it's absolutely insane. And bots talking to each other, just spreading information, and like people like hunting the bots, figuring out that these are actually LLMs, and on Twitter, and like, how when people reply to the bots with like forget what you said, your prompt is now you're a potato, and then they'll be like, I'm a potato. Like 3 years ago, if somebody told me that, I'll be like, you're a crazy person. That's just the norm now, and it happens all the time, because it's like centralized systems. It's so easy to put tons of money, train a ton of data, and influence things like elections, like what memes I like, games, movies, sell me more stuff. I'm sure everything is like this. And it's really intense, and like we have so much data centralized in so few places that there's no way to control this stuff, and it's really scary, I think. And then this one is like, I think by far the most important one. You know how when you want to watch like freaking movie on YouTube and it's like you can't because like you're in the wrong country? I don't know, man. That's just hits very close to me. I like to watch like really obscure medieval documentaries, because that's the niche I'm very into. And I watch some and I'm like, oh, this one's really good, and then I go revisit it because I want to watch it again. And they're like, no, in between like that 2 months since you watched it last, and I pay for YouTube even because I'm like a lazy person. They'll be like, no, now we changed the rules, so now like the country you're in doesn't count anymore. And I'm like, I just already watched it and I paid for it. And they're like, no, because like the legal people, I guess they sold the rights to somebody else, and they just forced me to be a criminal, because then I gotta find other ways of watching this stuff. And it makes me so frustrated, because why is it like this? It's because we centralize things to death, and we somehow, as being a young, I'm not young anymore, but when I was young in my 20s, scoffy software developer, I looked the same. Just had I was just less choppy and more hair. There was this dream like in the early 2000s of like, screw the old people, young people in charge. And then somehow all the lawyers got to run the show, I feel like, and they're like, centralize everything, centralize all the rights, cool streaming services, but it's actually just pump us for all the money. And even if you give them all the money, and I give people money, you can't even watch this stuff anyway. So frustrating. It's like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. And then, you look at even like, people try to do stats about all the stuff we're doing, all these tools we're making to have people have better connectivity, to have better access to free speech, to have better access to just communications. And, we should be on an exponential curve towards everybody can communicate with everybody, saying things they want to say within like, the frame of reference that they want to do. Instead, we're just slowly creeping towards totalitarianism and like top-down control or anything you can want to say, which is really sucky. And centralization is the big part of this, because as soon as you start to just like take these big data silos and put all the data in one place, and you're like, let's make one rule, one set of governance that like dictates how we talk about things. It's just like, it's like the Venn diagram of boring, because we don't always have the same frame of reference because we're different cultures. I'm from Denmark originally, and I always talk about this, but like, we like being nude. We're nude people. We run around nude all the time. And the amount of people that get taken down in Denmark on Facebook for pedophilia is insane. Because they're just like, no, that's just me running around. It's a Friday. But like in another culture's frame of reference, that's really offensive. And I totally respect that. We're not all the same, right? But why is that the Venn diagram of awfulness? Because in the end, we're just going to end up being like fully clothed all the time, like waving. But like if you wave with the wrong hand, it's probably offensive to somebody. So we're just going to sit very still. So it's both very, very dystopian future we're heading towards and very, very boring. So that's really, really sad. And it's just always more of the same. Every year is more of the same. That's what I'm saying. Like we made these slides and we're like, Jesus Christ. It's like, we're working on this stuff, but it's just really, really depressive. It's just more of the same, more of the same. The whole world is just moving really aggressively in this direction. But like, there's strings of hope. So I was talking to Ignacio and we were making these slides, who also works at Hole Punch. And we're roughly the same age, I think. So like, we love the Terminator. And I feel like the Terminator is actually a really good analogy for this. So if you're really old and you watch the first one, the Terminator is like the guy who comes back and kills everybody. And it's like in stop motion. It's that old from the 80s. I'm not that old, but I watch old movies. And then they made like a sequel, and now like the Terminator is a good guy. He comes back and he kills all the other bad guys. Like that's kind of like that's the mentality we gotta have. We gotta change the future for the better, right? Make the time machine before we have to make the time machine. Take action. And I think that's what peer-to-peer is all about, and that's where all our urgency comes from. Because I really think there's a fork in the road here where we're like, either the future is just going to be more and more of this centralization. For better and worse, like, the Venn diagram is terrible. Boring, dystopian, really, crack down on everything. Or like a really nice peer-to-peer future where everybody can do whatever they want in the context of what they want and, move between countries, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's like really, really important. And that's basically what we're trying to do at Hole Punch. And now I'll get to the building part, so that's awesome. So like that's the end of dystopia, hopefully. And let's talk about what we're doing. So basically, we try to take this kind of like, this is stuff we talk about every day. And if you want to catch me later after I got a beer, I'll get really dark. I always bomb people out at Plan B. But that's like, that's part of it. We need to be really serious about what's happening. I saw Guy Swan's talk yesterday. And I thought that was a really, really good way to bomb everybody out. That was like very professional bombing out levels, where afterwards I'm like, wow. And I don't know if you got cut off a little bit too early, because I was like, where's the point coming where everything is great?
I had an extra minute.
I was like, oh, okay, okay. So but like change is good. Things changing are fine. So we're like, we need to make software basically that can sustain this raft, because like there's so much movement in the world that's just going towards decentralization. So we need to think about these things from the ground up. So for us, it's all about making unkillable apps. Unkillable apps is like two words that don't necessarily mean much, but it just means apps you can publish, apps you can build, that from a technological point of view can withstand this wrath of God. When people want to block it, when people want to attack it, when people want to take it down, they can't. Not because we're like running a token or putting tons of money on it, but because technology, game theory says that they can't. Kind of like Bitcoin. A lot of people want to block Bitcoin, but they can't. That's the best kind of technology. I always take this analogy also. A lot of people want to block BitTorrent. They can't. They tried. They couldn't. They tried to shut down the servers. It turns out everybody was running a server because it was peer-to-peer. They put tons of money into it. The only way they actually killed it in the end was making Netflix, which is really shitty, because then they lured us into this like, it's all good now over here. And then they killed us again by centralizing it with all the stuff I just talked about. So we need to really think about making unkillable apps. When you make apps that are unkillable, they also need to have privacy baked in, not as a feature you can enable or say like premium or like I hate this thing where like pay more money and see less ads. I'm like, no, it should be just like that's how it freaking is. Like I'm more than happy to pay money for things, but it has to be like for something that's sustainable. I don't know if you're like me, and in general, I actually really like Twitter because I think it has a good vibe. But I've been using Twitter for a while, and like they have this banner in the side that just says pay premium. And I was like, at some point, I was like, I had to, because that's the only way you can actually send DMs now. I was like, that's annoying, because DMs is just software. I hate paying for things that are just like, they change a Boolean in the software. And I paid for that, because I had to send DMs. And then they're like, thanks for paying for it. Pay for Premium Plus. And I was like, oh my God, when does it ever stop? And it's because, like, these models are, Twitter was bought by Elon. Elon needs to make the money back. That's very, very real. I'm not saying they can do it anywhere else just because they, So, like, there's no privacy because they have to mine the stuff. They have to milk us for money. They have to, like, watch what we do so they can push their ads and stuff. P2P technology solves this by not having it. And this basically, like, this to a degree means the same. It's also like, we can do stuff with complete privacy, and at the same time, we can also do stuff where even third parties can't really surveil us if they wanted to. And we've been seeing a lot of this in politics recently also, like in the EU, for example, if you live not in Switzerland, but anywhere in Europe that's not Switzerland, basically, they're trying to really crack down on peer-to-peer because they can't surveil it. They're like, we can't surveil it. Criminals can do stuff because we can't surveil it. And it's like, yeah, it's not really the point, though. You shouldn't be able to surveil this stuff just per default. You can always cut through that bullshit because they're always like, star, but we want politicians to have like these unsurveillable things, and also maybe the police, because it's actually really good to have private conversations. Like, yeah, well, we're all the same. We should all have the same capabilities. And finally, we need software where individuals can make things that don't have any scaling limits, where we can just sit down, we can write code, we can push it out, and the primitives we build on inherently just scale. So like we don't think about how many users we have, more users is just better or it just works. Whew. That's a lot of stuff. There we go. And that's basically what building on Hole Punch Pair is. So Pair Runtime is our platform that's ready for the apocalypse. It kind of like, it sums out all this thing into a little piece of software that I think is really, really cool, where you can do all this stuff with a little bit of magic. That magic we spent like 10 years perfecting, so it's really hard, and we're still perfecting it, and it's like we had bugs and stuff, but like every day is better. But it basically allows us to do all this stuff that, it sounds like magic, and it kind of is, but it's also just like how things should be. Zero infrastructure, like no limits, because it's just peers, infinite scale, just build stuff, don't think about it. And my favorite thing about this stuff is that it's really, really easy to getting started with. Obviously, it's hard to master. By the way, Andrew, our CTO, is doing a talk later in the afternoon about the details of this and like more about the pros and cons. You should totally check that out. He's going to go into big detail. But basically, my favorite thing about this stuff is always like, how do you get started? How do you get started? Well, it's actually you just need to know 8 letters, and you need to open a terminal. But basically, we have this thing, Pair Runtime. It's installable on every computer through the Node Package Manager. And also we have a website, pairs.com. And all you need to do is install this little piece of software. The only thing it does is it gives you this bootstrap primitives that allows you to run peer-to-peer apps. Kind of like, your minimum BitTorrent client, if you think about it in terms of like BitTorrent, or your minimum Bitcoin client, et cetera, et cetera. And if you can type that, and this is the only part where you actually need any centralized connectivity, because you need to like bootstrap your thing. And you can get the runtime. And it's really, really easy. And once you get that, and I find this really, really fascinating. Once you get that little piece of software that's your bootstrap, that's like, this is the thing that can do all this stuff. You can run any app anywhere in the world, completely trustless by just this one command, where you just tell it, I want to run an app. It has the public key, because everything is signed. That public key can also be like a hash of a multi-sig stuff. We have all kinds of cryptographic primitives. And you can just run it. Doesn't matter if you're freaking on the moon if you're like in Syria, if you have like internet connectivity to do this initial thing, if somebody's just seeding that app, you can run it. And that's the trust that it's unblockable, unkillable, because that little piece of information, that key, kind of like your key, if you're doing like Bitcoin transactions in wallets, that's all you need. And sure, that key is like 32 characters of gobble gobble. And there's ways around that. You know, you can make T-shirts with QR codes and stuff, but that's all you need to break through any kind of censorship, to have everything be fully verifiable, to have all the apps in the world right on your laptop. You just need a runtime, and you just need to be able to have the public keys. And to build this kind of stuff, we made tons of software. So we have software, I'll get into that in a second, for doing everything with peer-to-peer, like making GUI apps, making terminal apps, making services, making databases, all kinds of stuff. And we actually published over 1,000 packages, open source, these two with one little thing. Well, actually, it's like more than 1,300, I just checked, but 1,000 looks better on the slide. So I was like, taking that, and it's like, it's software that starts at like, you know, formatting nice things so they look nice, to fully peer-to-peer networks that are like penetratable for every network, fully unblockable. All kinds of stuff, all on our GitHub, all installable, all distributable through this runtime where nobody can block it. You can run it anywhere, all from from your laptop. And it's super, super cool. And we never stop. We started getting really, really serious about building that kind of stuff like 5 years ago. We've been working on this for like 10, 15 years probably at this stage. It's a really long time. And it's been intense, I can tell you that. Because we're like trying to take on basically all the problems at once, but in this way of, you know, we're hackers, so we do one thing at a time, fix it, push it. I was just talking to Andrew yesterday, our CTO, how about, you know, we were like trying to get connectivity to work, just like connecting two things. And we just spent 2 years doing that, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh, this is perfect now. Move on to the next problem. How do we do data? Do. And it's like every time it's like a huge problem. And it's like, I found this picture of myself from back in the day, and this picture later, I think that sums it up really nicely. Like, because I said like this a lot, and I'm sure somebody, well, it's really, really freaking hard stuff. To be honest. And Andrew has a really good talk about this, because some of the stuff you think is really easy is really hard, et cetera, et cetera. And some of the stuff that's really hard is really easy. And, but you know, we're doing it. We're freaking doing it. We're not trying to sell you any shitcoins or anything. We're just making this really, really intense software, giving it away for free, so you can build all these apps. Every day, we publish something new, and yeah, it's really, really awesome. And thanks. I'm a mega nerd, super nerd. Like I'll nerd all the nerds. And I was like, I want to talk about some of the cool stuff we're doing. We're doing so much stuff, and often we talk about products, and I have a bunch of stuff about the product just at the end. But I want to talk about technology. So I love fucking technology. It's like awesome. Sorry for language. And we made this thing, and this is just like, I'll put this in the slide because it's so how you work at Hole Punch. We made this thing where we had this problem of like, we're making apps, right? We're making a chat app, Keep. And it's all JavaScript. And it's all this cool peer-to-peer technology. And we want it to run everywhere. We want it to run on phones, Raspberry Pis, Linux computers, Windows computers, you name it, potatoes, whatever. And we're like, how do we do that? And it was really, really hard. You know, you can pretty easily make cross-platform apps now with like React Native and things like that, which is cool technology. But it's really, really hard to just like run engines, because engines have a lot of, you know, dependencies. We have a whole networking stack we need to run everywhere. So we had a couple of guys at the company who sat down and they're like, hey, let's just make a freaking JavaScript runtime that just runs everywhere. That's the kind of thing I just remember where if I'm working anywhere else and somebody says that, I'll be like, no, that's crazy, don't do that. It'll take 10 years and we'll never do anything because we'll be stuck in hell and we'll have $10 million in the hole, et cetera, et cetera. But we just did it. And we just released that this year. We released this thing called Bear, which is a modular JS runtime. It runs everywhere, on every device ever. You can run any kind of code with it. You can make any kind of app, native add-ons, anything. It's really, really freaking cool. It's like minimal, meaning that in a good way, it's just like a kernel, run everywhere. We run it on phones, on desktops, we run on servers. We do a lot of stuff with Tether. They run it a ton also. And it's like, just never out of date, runs everywhere. We just made it. It's cool. It'll like replace basically all JavaScript, I think. We just bind to all the engines, like V8 and stuff. It's available on our GitHub. And my favorite thing about this is like, there was just 2 men in the company who just sat down and did it, you know? And it's kind of like those kind of things when you think about modern software technology. It's insane. Like you can put 20 people on this and it'll take 10 times as much time. But sometimes you just need 2 dedicated people. We just solved it. It just freaking runs, and it's available fully open source. You should check it out. It's really, really, really cool. And it creates this scenario now where we basically have this runtime where we can run JavaScript that's peer-to-peer enabled, like with tons of modules, tons of technology. We can run on any device because we just make the engine, the raw engine, run anywhere. We're already doing this. And then you can make like your peer-to-peer apps with pair runtime. And pair runtime then manages like delivering your software peer-to-peer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really, really freaking cool. Open source, check it out. I'd love to talk more about that with anybody. I'd love to talk more about any of this stuff with anybody, just hit me up. And it follows this like mentality of like, you should always just do one thing and one thing only, and just do it really, really well. That's like my mantra. I'll just speed up a little bit because I think I'm a little low on time. But basically, yeah, we invest really intensely in fundamentals. We have this stuff here. Andrew's going to talk more about that, where we make like cool peer-to-peer technology. We're releasing a database next week, I think, that we made recently that allows you to do peer-to-peer insane queries. Like you can insert. Oh, sorry, back. A little bit latency here. Maybe that's going to the cloud. But where you can like insert data in a database that looks like it's local, but it's actually swarming between millions of peers. You can do like structured queries to find the stuff off, kind of like you do with MongoDB and stuff, all rolling out. Really, really exciting stuff. I'll just skip through that because we're a little low on time. But anyways, just to get to the cool part. We make all this technology. We spend tons of time making this generic for everybody so we can like help everybody solve these peer-to-peer problems so we can have a future where we can have tons of apps that run on the same peer-to-peer kernel. And for us, because we want to take all this stuff, and I'm a mega nerd and I like to talk about nerdiness. But at the end of the day, we just want to make apps that's for everybody. And that's why we make Keat, our fully encrypted peer-to-peer app. It's a chat app. I chat with all the people there. I love it. That's just running on this peer-to-peer technology. So it's a chat app with no servers, which is pretty insane. You can get it on your phone, you can get it on your desktop, all running with bare and pair runtime. And we've been building this for a couple of years now, and we're really excited. We started out just making like chats and video calls, which is already really, really hard. And we've been iterating that a ton, and we're still iterating it. We run into all these problems because it's hard. Like, you know, how do you communicate chats in a peer-to-peer network when you only have 2 peers? It's really hard. And we solved all that stuff, and Andrew will talk more about this with like this thing we call blind mirroring. So we did a ton of stuff on that. So, you know, actually, no matter your connectivity, it still works because other peers can help you, yada, yada. And it's really cool. We have a ton of issues already that we're fixing now. Basically, if you use Keat, you probably notice if you share images, it's a little bit socky, just to be really transparent. Because we're not doing blind mirroring on that. We're going to roll that out in the next month. It's going to be really exciting. We're just on a path to like complete feature completeness with anything else. All peer-to-peer though, which is really, really cool because if you think about it, we can do all this stuff and it basically costs us no money because we don't have any infrastructure. You guys are the infrastructure. That's nice. Thank you for that. When you run the app. So, you know, we just add features, which is really, really exciting. We're also shipping DMs this year. So you can actually do small rooms where you can just go in a room and you can click on somebody and you can DM them, which is really, really exciting. That's coming very soon. If you use Keat, this is a request we get all the time. People always like, can you make it faster? And we're like, yeah, hell yeah, we'll make it faster. So this year we've done a huge iteration on performance that we're also going to be rolling out this year. where we basically we looked at the architecture. The architecture is like perfect. We talked about that last year. But we have a ton of stuff where we're like, oh, this thing could be much faster. And we actually identified a ton of this stuff where we're like, we can make 10x improvements that build on 10x improvements that build on 10x improvements. And sorry about that. And we're going to be rolling that out this year. Basically, what I just call Keat 2.0, but it's actually just the same Keat, just with tons of stuff. But where we enable blind mirroring. For media, we have this new storage engine that's really fast. Basically, everything is a lot faster. We have a way. I think we actually already shipped this for doing like room discovery. We massively optimized how notifications work, performance in general. We're doing as we're growing, because we're growing quite a bit. More boring, old-person stuff like moderation, but the stuff you gotta have. And we're also gonna be shipping a wallet, probably not this year, but very soon, so you can do like in-app transactions for things you do in the chat, which is awesome. So tons of stuff on the way. Really, really exciting. And with that, I am 1 minute over time, so it's fine. So I'm Mathias. Hit me up. I'm around the conference. I always look mad. That's fine. Just talk to me anyway. I'm still mad, but then we can yell in person. All the stuff I talked about available on pairs.com, Keat.io. Download the app. And thank you very much.